Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode 29 of the Nurse Trauma Healing Podcast. I'm Dr. Lorre, your host and author, nurse scientist, and trauma burnout expert. And today we're going to continue our conversation from last week regarding the workforce crisis. And this is part 2 of a 2-part series. So if you missed last week's podcast, you can tune in at drlorelaws.com/episode 28, and we will drop that link in the show notes for you. So continuing on with our conversation regarding this Optum Report survey of 150 C-suite executives that was recently appeared in the New England Journal of Medicine. And these C-suite executives were from, about half of them were from the provider segment, about 35% were from payer and other insurance segments, and then about 13% represented by state and federal government agencies. So in this podcast episode, I'm going to continue discussing what is going on behind that corporate curtain, and also fully disclose that I am also taking my seat at the table, as they say. I'm taking my big girl chair, my big girl pants, and I will be attending the panel. I am among the panel of experts who will be discussing this report and looking to find strategies of how we can move forward together. I 100% will be advocating for nurse safety and professional well-being and trauma-informed workplaces for us all. So stay tuned for those details in upcoming weeks. Now, back to that report, which really emphasized the need for a healthy work environment, but it once again doesn't consider the impact of avoidable trauma exposures. It's not just about technology and training, which is what a big portion of this report discussed. It's also about safe, healthy, and professionally well work environments. Small things like mentoring and buddy systems, small gestures of appreciation can be helpful in some instances. But here's what the C-suite executives are overlooking. They are trying to take care of their employees by building a house from platitude cards of pizza parties, positivity squads, and those ever so thoughtful Nurse Appreciation Week gifts that you see all over social media during that week, right? And so building a house of platitude cards instead of getting to the crumbling foundation that is avoidable nurse-specific and occupational-related traumatization. What is needed, and you've heard me talk about it ad nauseum, is we need a culture where people, including health workers, including nurses, feel seen, valued, safe, thriving in their roles. And to do that, we have got to take a trauma-informed approach to occupational safety and well-being. For those of you who are just joining this podcast community, there are a number of ways in which nurses and other health professionals are being avoidably traumatized in their roles. I'm going to drop an image in the show notes for you, and I'm just going to quickly, in the briefest of refreshers, walk us through, because we are all trained to know how to manage vicarious and secondary trauma or trauma from disasters. We get this training in nursing school, and it is a form of unavoidable trauma exposure. It's inherent with the profession. It comes with the job. But that's not the problem. The problem, and what is literally driving nurses and other health professionals from their role, is the avoidable trauma exposures in the form of, say, historical trauma, which is, that old, for example, one of many examples is nurses eating their young. An example of maybe workplace violence trauma. That could be the physical violence, verbal gaslighting, bullying, hazing, and incivilities of all kind. Then we have our system-induced trauma. And this is where the system is the trauma, that it is the trauma source, right? And so an example of this would be, you've been assaulted by a patient at work and you report it according to policy. And then the first question you're asked is, what could you have done differently? That's, well, that's another layer of trauma on top of an already traumatic experience. Then we have insufficient resource trauma, which we're all very, very familiar with, which are those dangerous staffing ratios being floated to units outside of your specialty. And then there's the second victim trauma that's often secondary to health or organizational system inadequacies, such as carrying the burden of shame or guilt after a near miss, adverse, or sentinel event when it was really not even the nurse's fault. So all of this is what's missing from the New England Journal of Medicine's report and the Optum survey. Rest assured, I will be speaking to these important topics when I'm in session at that roundtable. So here are some other strategies that the C-suite executives are considering. And the first one they're looking at is partnering for solutions, also known as outsourcing. At least 72% of C-suite executives say outsourcing for certain functions is super important. They are thinking here like, supply chain management or revenue cycle management, IT, coding, etc. The typical outsourcing that, while helpful, also contributes to the degree of fragmentation within any system. Included in partnering for solutions, quote unquote, conversations are centered on AI-driven technologies to support health professionals, virtual health, and more. But then there's this whole elephant in the middle of the room, and that is, what is the role of technology in tackling the workforce staffing crisis? Prioritizing technology-driven solutions over employee safety and professional well-being. It doesn't feel aligned, and it doesn't feel like it's getting to root cause. And it's not about what I feel. Well, that has value. It's about what the research suggests around trauma-informed workplaces. So some of the things they're considering is automation. 61% are prioritizing automation. Workflow automations, assisted technologies, and other automations that are used to enhance human capabilities. But finding that sweet spot where technologies optimize processes, reduce administrative burdens, or free up healthcare professionals to do what we do best, which is caring for our patients. Other solutions include adding yet another layer of management to help integrate technologies into workflow and study how these processes and outcomes are optimized, all while keeping the human perspective central. And boy, I tell you what, it's really easy for that technology to slip in, and and we can lose ourselves very easily in that. It's so important. It is so important to be mindful as we engage with our technologies, and it's impossible to be mindful if you're in sympathetic overdrive or dorsal vagal freeze or collapse, right? It's not available to the nervous system. So I see big thunder clouds brewing on the horizon. So in light of these tech-driven solutions, we need to be ever more mindful that each of us, the patient, their family members, the nurse, the providers, all of the health professionals, each of us are whole human beings who are so much more than the sum of our parts. We are inseparable from the contexts and systems within which we live and work. So rather than taking 3 steps back to see where more holistic and integrative approaches can be taken to the staffing crisis, Leaders are doubling down on the reductionistic, mechanistic, and technologically driven approaches rather than partnering with the very human physiology of its employees and the ancient wisdom of the autonomic nervous system and vagus nerve. Health professionals, too, are whole human beings with their own individual and occupational related trauma histories. So instead of outsourcing, partnering, and adding yet more layers of infrastructure and bureaucratic burden on an already overworked, unsafe, traumatized employees, why not start with the primal need for safety? Start there. To the C-suite executives, I say, please look in the mirror. Would you be willing to work in your clinical setting? I mean, really, just pick one and then go work there for like, I don't know, a day, a week, ideally a month. Then tell us how your tech-driven solutions and automations improved your safety, professional well-being, and mental health. So we have many other different solutions to the healthcare staffing crisis, but they all require C-suite executives to start thinking differently. We need to challenge the ways that things have always been done. We need to challenge the prevailing burnout narrative that is more than 5 decades old, a half of a century. I mean, we need a refresh, a reboot on that science. And we also need to prioritize health professional safety and well-being instead of prioritizing technology. Yes, technology is important, but it should never be a higher priority than the human that is either receiving or delivering the care. We need workplaces where health professionals are safe, valued, appreciated, and really able to practice to the full scope of their license. In short, we need a sustainable workforce. And what does that look like? Well, it's not just a numbers games, butts in seats, bodies on floor. That is the old approach, the revolving door approach. It's over. It is over. A sustainable workforce now starts with employees who are safe, who feel safe because they are safe. And there's practicing with safe ratios and workloads. Employees who are motivated, and because they are safe, they can be by proxy resilient. I mean, it's just not that hard. I guess it's not that hard if you've been the person conducting the research for over 5 years. And I understand that, I'm so deep in the evidence barrel here. And so it's one of those things. It's like, I can't unsee it. Okay, so we need a workplace where people feel like they actually belong, where they can be safe and regulated in their nervous system, thriving in their window of tolerance. This is the foundation of a healthy, resilient, and sustainable workforce. That's what the C-suite executives want, and they're going about it backwards, using the same old regurgitations of the evidence base that have been around for decades. So nurses should be, and all health professionals should be, safe and thriving in the window of tolerance, which means they're in that ventral vagal state where we're grounded, present, mindful, socially connected and engaged, heart-centered. That's how we're supposed to be delivering patient care. And then going into our sympathetic circuit to meet these stressors of daily living and practice, right? And so how do we keep that window of tolerance open so that we can be in ventral vagal tone most of the time? Well, we need to be sufficiently staffed. We need to be adequately resourced. We need to have workplace safety and civility. We need to be seen, valued, heard, well compensated, and have our professional wellness prioritized. That keeps us in that ventral vagal tone, which also contributes to the organization's financial well-being. They go hand in hand. And so that's why we want to keep that window wide open. And then when we're working from that strong, stable foundation of a safe and professionally well employee base, then those other strategies will be sustainable. And, you know, there isn't one magic solution that fits every problem, but the common denominator is that nurses and all health employees need to be safe and feel safe in their roles, and that ripples out to everything else. But it takes a multi-pronged approach, to attract and retain talent, to foster a positive and inclusive environment, to provide growth and development opportunities, to embrace technology thoughtfully and through a humanistic lens, to leverage data, to be strategic about partnerships. It's about looking at the whole picture and realizing that all of these pieces are interconnected and interdependent and synergistic with one another. There isn't a silver bullet, a single fix. It's about finding the right combinations of strategies that work at your organization while keeping your people and being willing to adapt and change as the healthcare landscape keeps shifting. But we must take a trauma-informed approach to addressing the healthcare staffing crisis, or we're going to end up right back where we are, or worse. By the end of this decade, the world, globally speaking, is going to have half of the number of nurses it needs. I don't know about you, but I find that number frightening, quite frankly, not only for myself and my family and my loved ones, but for every patient and every family that ever is going to interact with the health system, which is like nearly everyone. That's why I am here doing this work. But we need to take this trauma-informed approach. It's about collaboration, learning from one another, and recognizing that we're all in this together. The healthcare staffing crisis is a complex challenge, no doubt, but it's one that we can solve if we work together and embrace these new trauma-informed approaches to workplace safety and professional well-being. It reminds us that the future of healthcare isn't about technology, AI, or robots taking over. It's about humans and technology working together to create a healthcare system that's safer, supportive, compassionate, heart-centered, more sustainable, more efficient, and ultimately more human-centered. So I discuss all of this and more in my upcoming book, Nursing Our Healer's Heart, a recovery guide for nurse trauma and burnout. It is available to pre-order wherever books are sold. The links for which are on my website at drlorrelaws.com/book, or you can just Google my name. It'll pop right up. If you or someone you know, whether it's an individual or at the organizational level, if there's struggles with burnout, overwhelm, exhaustion, attrition, retention, all of that, please consider taking my 5-question assessment to learn if and how you've been affected by nurse or occupational specific trauma at drlorrelaws.com/assessment. Until next time, thank you for all that you are and all that you do. I see you, I hear you, and I am here for you. From my healer's heart to yours. And until next time, namaste.